Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our afternoon workshop, Next Generation Traffic Incident Management, Safety and Mobility Benefits for All. My name is Douglas Noble, Senior Director, Management and Operations here at the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and I will be introducing today's workshop. Before we get started, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. IT would like to thank our champion sponsor for our annual meeting, Gannett Fleming, Siemens, and Transoft Solutions for their support of the entire conference. And also to Kimley Horn for sponsoring this week's sessions and workshops. In today's workshop, we will have the speaker presentations first, an interactive discussion of case studies, and concluding remarks. During the presentation portions of the workshop, we encourage you to type your questions into the chat pane as they come to mind, and we will work to address them as we go. For the interactive sessions, please use the raise hand function in Zoom, and we will call on you. Also, as you come in and during the course of the meeting, please mute your microphones in Zoom. Your attendance at this workshop includes PDH credits. The link for receiving PDH credits will be shared in the chat box. So be sure to save the link for access to the post-workshop evaluations. The recording of this workshop will be available on the IT Learning Hub within 48 hours for all meeting registrants. If we could bring up the workshop presentation slides now. Katie, that's you. Thank you. And so at this point, I would like to go ahead and introduce some of our speakers for today's conference, today's workshop. We have Paul Joden, who is the NextGen TIM co-lead for the FHWA Office of Operations. Also, who would be participating today but was drawn away by an urgent matter is Jim Ostrich, who also is the Everyday Counts 6 co-lead from the FHWA Office of Operations. Joe Tebow, also from the NextGen TIM team, and Steve Syra from the NextGen TIM team. During the roundtable discussion of case studies, we also have a number of other people who will be sharing their experience, and they will be introduced to you as we get to that point, part of the workshop. Detailed speaker bios are available on the website under the session description. So now I'd like to transition this, and we'll be hearing from Steve Syra to start the workshop.
Thank you very much, Doug. Well, welcome everybody. I have been throughout my career have leveraged the learning opportunities and session opportunities through ITE for many years, and again recognize that you're all taking time out of your busy annual meeting schedule and also your general working schedule to listen in on the workshop that we're going to present to you today. So next slide, Katie. So from an overview, just want to give you a quick overview of what we're going to be addressing today. Doug largely did this, but we want to just sort of confirm the learning objectives. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the evolution of TIM, or the history of TIM, and why that's important, and especially as we're looking forward to the future. And then we'll talk about in detail some of the FHWA initiatives, including the Everyday Counts, the 6th Everyday Counts initiative, which really spotlights the importance of traffic incident management and moving it to the next level. From a learning objectives perspective, next, thanks. I want to just remind everybody that this is, in fact, is a workshop, and Doug talked about some mechanisms for you to basically engage and interact with us, and we certainly strongly encourage that. There's really no bad questions that you can ask, and we're here to help. We're all learning just like you are, and your questions actually help us understand and learn what some of the practitioners are facing, as well as some of the consultant staff that supports those practitioners. So we're really hoping that this can be a platform for all of you in taking TIM to the next level or next generation. And no matter what your experience level, you each can influence the effectiveness of this critical transportation safety initiative. And so again, we'd really value your input and discussion and questions throughout the presentation and throughout the workshop. Next slide. A lot of words on this slide, but some that I just want to highlight. I'll let you folks read it, but we're really talking about traffic incident management being planned, coordinated, and multidisciplinary. And that's really, really important because TIM, to be effective with TIM, it truly is a team process and a team effort. And we have to work very closely with our public safety responders and towing and responders and other transportation professionals. So it's really about reducing the duration of the incident, because as you all know, the longer an incident is out there, the more congestion we have, and most importantly, the longer exposure or longer duration results in safety impacts for both the responders as well as the motorists that are stuck in the queue. So really it's about saving time, but that saving time directly correlates to improving safety and efficiency. Next slide. So not only are the multidiscipline responders noted here on this slide kind of as a primary audience, including all of you that are out there that are transportation engineers and planners and other professionals, but also the various use cases with TIM, with traffic incident management applicability. So you've seen these types of slides before, where some of the key areas stand out, but all of these are applicable to traffic incident management. And it's taken us a little while to better understand that and all the secret sauce of making this all work, and understanding again the audiences, the responders, the stakeholders, and then the applications and use cases is a big part of that. Next slide. Why is this important? We along with FHWA, of course, has done multiple workshops on really hammering some of the statistics, some of the alarming statistics that are associated with traffic incident management. Everything that we always hear about, we're not doing as good a job as we could, or the trend is going in the wrong way for fatal accidents. Then you add injury and property damage only. That's a 2018 statistic, but nearly 7 million incidents happening on an annual basis. And that just points to, we've all been stuck in traffic, and we've all seen the safety ramifications of that. And as I said before, the more a responder is exposed out there, the longer the incident occurs, the more congestion there is and safety risks to the motorists and the responders themselves. So basically, real simply, is TIM works, and we've demonstrated that over and over again. And so that's why we really try to emphasize that it's evidence-based, that we have statistical data that shows that it works, and it does not have to be an expensive solution. A lot of the institutional and coordination and communication elements can be very low cost, and you think they just happen by chance, but there has to be a coordinated effort to making them work. Next slide. So from the next couple of slides, I guess I want to speak to the, as I mentioned before, the evolution of traffic incident management. And sort of maybe picture yourself at an ITE conference in 1930. Okay, ITE members and transportation professionals were probably charged with addressing the growing concerns of vehicles crashing into one another, and then the negative safety issues that are associated with that. So through the last 100 years or so, with the advent of the automobile, the birth of the interstate network, and then as we started to integrate technology and TMCs, we started to see, hey, we're starting to take this pretty seriously, and we're establishing basically a practice around which we're going to address these incidents. So that's the main point that I wanted to get across here, is that traffic incident management has evolved and it needs to continue to evolve. And I'll speak to that on the next slide a bit. Go ahead, Katie. So now fast forward to the first 20 of the next 100 years. We need to continue working together and engaging our response partners to continually improve and evolve traffic incident management so that tomorrow's incidents, potentially those involving both electric and automated vehicles, can be managed as safely and efficiently as possible. And yes, someday we may get to the point where automated vehicles may significantly reduce human error and the associated crashes with human error. But realistically, we are decades from that. And what this slide illustrates is there's been a ton of progress in the last 20 years of establishing the framework and building momentum to the point where we are today, where we can actually say, we're progressing to the next generation of traffic incident management, and we're all working together to take it to the next level. Next slide. So often we try to frame the whole traffic incident management area in the form of a business case. And by business case, we primarily, recognize that the result of incidents, the result of safety impacts, of crashes, of property damage, that all results in increased cost. And so if we can mitigate the impacts of traffic incidents, that's a business case for reducing costs. And when we do that, we're also improving responder and motorist safety. We're significantly helping with operational efficiency. And probably the biggest monetary element of that is the improvement to commerce and commercial vehicle operations, mobility in general. And then, of course, just the quality of life, that nobody likes being stuck in long queues and congestion resulting from incidents. And if you can have an area that's doing a very good job with that, the quality of life thereby is enhanced as well. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Joe Tebow, who's going to talk a little bit more about really what do we mean by advancing TIM to the next generation.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Welcome, everyone. My background has been in the past 44 plus years in fire rescue, EMS field, out there on the highways and byways responding. But I have a fairly lengthy transportation background also as a crash investigator in a few different disciplines. And now some of you, I looked at some of the survey questions that came back. So I know that we're at both ends of the rainbow here as far as familiarity with traffic incident management. So we're from, hey, I don't know anything about it, this is my first go, to, yeah, we're into it, we're full swing here. So what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try to not give it to you at the 30,000 foot level, bring it down maybe to the mountaintop, right below the clouds, and talk to you a little bit about the next gen of TIM. And it's okay if you missed the first generation, pick it up from here. So next gen TIM, traffic incident management, right? Focusing on working with the state, the local, and tribal partners. You see it on the slide. You can read it there. We're looking to bring this process down off of the expressways and highways where it's lived for quite a while, successfully, I might add also. But, back in my day when we worked on the expressway, it was like a game of Frogger. If you're not familiar with it, right? You're trying to cross the highway without getting struck. But we're bringing it back down off of the expressways into the local roadways, into the communities, the arterials, the rurals. We're bringing it on back down. And while we do that, we're going to introduce and promote the best we can the integration of proven and underutilized innovative technology, data and training strategies. So as I move through here, I'm going to go ahead and shut my video off so I'm not too bandwidth challenged here, and that way you don't have to look at me. You just remember me you know, my name, Joe Tebow, I'm the good looking one, so that's easy to remember. NextGen TIM focus areas, right? This is what we're taking a look at. I mentioned expanding TIM to the local roadways, and that's the focus of it. How are we going to do that, and by what means? What are our methods or tools, if you would? Well, responder training, it's all about safety, right? Steve was 100%, right? The sooner we can get it cleared up, right? The sooner people get off the road, that's all about safety. And the sooner motorists can continue on and commerce can continue. So we're looking at the responder training, and it is a top priority, and there are some additions and upgrades being made. Now, we're also looking at using TIM data. Data for better safety and operational decisions. We'll talk a little bit about that. And the technology end of it, amazing technology. As you all know, it's changing every day. It's proven, yet we know it's underutilized. Keith, thank you. Expanding the TIM focus to local roads first here, right? The coordination, right? Well, here's how we're doing it. Here's how we've seen and witnessed others be very successful at this. And that is holding the regular stakeholder meetings with all the disciplines and parties and players. We also engage and encourage the engagement in after action reviews when there is an incident, that all the parties can get together and say, here's everything that went well, here are the things that didn't go so well and we need to improve upon. So the coordination of it. And the policies and procedures part, you see unified command in the incident management system or in the incident command system. Unified command is where multiple agencies are working the exact same event. However, there's one person who's ultimately the incident commander. And we bring folks together to try to coordinate the chaos, if you would. Tactics, multidisciplinary training. That's one of the ways that we try to minimize the chaos that I just mentioned. And that is we bring all these different disciplines into the training sessions so they get to know each other, get to talk, get to share each other's stories, understand each other's challenges. And that's part of the bringing it all together, if you would, in the multidisciplinary training of having everyone at the table who deserves a seat at the table. And we can have 6, 8, or more disciplines working one event. So unified command, getting them trained together, everyone's on the same page. And what tools are out there to be used for this? Well, there are specialty tow programs that exist in different regions. Some are very creative. There are incident response vehicles that have a multitude of job functions as you move from state to state. Safety service patrols, pretty much the same way. They provide different services, all an intricate part of the traffic incident itself and getting it managed. ITS systems, intelligent transportation systems, right, play a big part in this as we're moving forward in the engineering mode. And that's where I want to take just a second between the ITS and the adaptive signal control portion of this to say, hey, I recognize that you folks are probably, most likely not probably, but are some of the most important people that the commuting public will never meet, right? And that is with a strong occupational and safety and health background, I can tell you that, you know, the safety starts in the design phase, right? Design and engineering, that's where it starts, right? And when we do a rebuild or we're going to reconfigure an area, you know, that all comes into play. Looking down the road, literally, and, you know, seeing what the needs are and updating it, knowing what's available out there to be implemented. So, you know, I recognize the importance of each of your roles. And as I said, I know it's the full spectrum here. Adaptive signal control, ITS, playing a huge part in what we're doing here. So let me touch on the TIM training part. We're making updates to the training materials. And 2021 update, right, is focusing on local roads. We're developing 5 tech lessons that will supplement the existing national training program, which each and every one of you, if you haven't taken the program, you can. It's free. It's easy to do. The use of alternative delivery methods, including web-based and virtual versions, right? And that's what we do. That's what really kept us marching forward throughout this entire pandemic, right? We were already lined up to roll this and continue on. Did it slow down? Yeah, sure it did. You know, folks had other things to do, but we kept it going, and we found that to be an incredibly useful, valuable tool. And then we're looking at the institutionalization of the training. And what do we mean by that? Well, we know that already we've accomplished, there's over 150 training academies, if you would, fire, EMS, law enforcement, even some of the towing organizations, where they have adopted the national TIM training in as part of their curriculum. It's mandatory. You cannot get through that academy unless you succeed in the TIM training process. That way we know that the folks that are just coming through, being trained or retrained, have this information, can implement it, understand it, and we've set the stage for future champions of the TIM training program. So once we're all gone, wherever it is we go, we know that there are champions behind us that will keep this going. So that's for the TIM training. How have we been doing? Well, you take a look at this map. Yeah, it's really busy. Don't hurt yourself looking at it. But I can tell you that pushing 600,000 responders trained with a goal of 1.1, 1.2 million. You can see some states are well advanced, way over the 50% trained. Some are in the catch-up mode, if you would. And you look at it regionally, and oftentimes you can kind of tie the color or the success there with, you know, the size of the state and the ruralness of the state oftentimes. So TIM data, we say what gets measured gets done. You may also say that, right? So how do we do this? What's up with the data? Well, the collection of the data, we get it and ask for it through the crash reports, through public safety computer-aided dispatch, which we'll talk about a little bit more as we move forward, and transportation management system centers, excuse me, the TMCs that are out there. We pull this data. They use the data. They're compiling data. They've developed their own dashboards that are public facing, and it's a better prediction at times of where the next problem is going to occur. So you know there's a lot of use for the TIM data, and then of course it's analyzing agency reports. And I mentioned the dashboards, which are some of those dashboards are just absolutely fabulous. Even in real time, some of them. So what do we use it for? Well, we are using it for performance measurement, right? The 4 bullets: resource allocation, a safety analysis if we're seeing problems in one particular area, and then of course, real-time operations through crowdsourcing, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Now, technology, computer-aided dispatch, CAD integration. And this is the benefit and what we're shooting for in the future. And it's almost a little bit of a moving target, and I'll explain why. Public safety communication centers, the 911 centers, the dispatch centers, you know, when they receive information of an event, right, and they're typing in to dispatch units, fire, rescue, EMS to that, or even law enforcement to that event, when they hit that send button, you know, the ideal situation would be for the transportation management center to also get dinged for that particular run. And it's like a heads up, you know, here's where we're going on one of your facilities or one of your roadways, and we may need support or do need support. So, you know, that's the ultimate process that we're looking for. Right now, we still have the 4 levels that are there. There's the manual notification, which is, you know, old school, if you would, these days, but it still works. It just takes someone away from something else to pick up the phone and make a phone call and have a conversation versus automatically. And then there's view only access, where the TMC can see what's happening. They really can't interact with it at all, but they know it's a heads up. They know what's going on. And then there's level 3, data verification required, in that the TMC can verify, yep, you're right, or nope, where you dispatched this run, it's actually, 3-mile markers further up the road, or whatever the case may be. And of course, the level 4 is what I mentioned at the beginning, automated data transfer. It's seamless. It goes from 911 center to the TMC, and then there can be an exchange from there. Also in the technology here is unmanned aircraft systems for traffic incident management. Now, I personally, I think this is like the coolest for me. Drones, as we commonly know them as drone, but we don't use that D word. We know primarily right now that the UASs are being used for crash reconstruction, and they're extremely efficient at that. Remarkable results from these drones and the software associated with it. We also know that it's for disaster response, post hurricane, post floods, where they can fly a UAS and do damage assessments and check structures, maybe bridges or runoffs, right? Situational awareness, it's being used for. Shoot a UAS straight up in the air from the crash scene and take a look at the queue. Take a look at, what's going on back there. Detour route monitoring, another great use for it, right? You can, without committing a whole group of folks that are going to have to drive out into this queue that's already established, they can get up high and take a look and say, hey, we're getting a little congested at the corner of walk and don't walk, and we need to do something about that without really having to send a human out there. And then there's incident verification, and we see this primarily, I guess I would say, in getting reports of secondary crashes, which is in the other column. But you can shoot a UAS up into the sky and take a look at your queue in the back and say, oh yeah, there it is. And maybe there's a tanker truck involved, right? So it's a great tool without having to commit a human to that, right? Queue detection and monitoring, I mentioned it. Secondary crash detection, it works for that. Response vehicle routing, another great tool. When you can shoot that UAS up into the sky and you can see that the communities around this event are already packed jammed with people jumping off the expressway or roadway, to take an alternative route, but you still have emergency apparatus coming in, you can give them direction to avoid that corner of walk and don't walk and choose a different route. Training and after action reviews. Training is a huge thing too that we're latching on to, in that when we do TIM training, we can put a UAS up into the air and video, the training and the results. So we can also download that, use it for tabletop exercises. It's great. And what I offer to you is that a lot of agencies are like, well, I'm not so sure if we can buy into that. But what they're finding is if they dig through their agency a little bit, maybe it's not in the engineering group, maybe it's in the maintenance group, but some of these organizations or even departments may already be using UAS for bridge inspection or river flood monitoring or other things. So maybe they've already cleared the hurdles that you're facing. So that informational exchange is what we at the Federal Highway can help you do, help you work through. Another technology, video sharing. Taking a look at the shot on the left, courtesy of Maryland DOT, responder vehicle to traffic management center systems. Now you see the little inlay there with the yellow box. That is a pan tilt zoom camera that's mounted on the vehicle. It's controlled back at the Transportation Management Center at the TMC, or it can be operated by the actual technician on the vehicle, and there's a tremendous value to these live streams. It's being sent right back to the TMC, and then the TMC can take a look at the crash scene. They can take a look at the traffic volume. Then they can take a look at their other cameras stationed throughout that general area and say, okay, we're good to go for a traffic diversion somewhere here or there. And then they can also take this information even live stream it out to responder vehicle systems. A lot of the fire service vehicles have KDT terminals in them. It's a laptop, if you would, a workbook, but they can pop that up on their screen and they can see what's going on before they get there. So it's a tremendous resource. And we also know that some of the safety service patrols and that are out there, we're equipped with these cameras. They can also do a cursory scan of the crash scene and maybe say, hey, look, there's approximately 350 feet of guardrail that's been destroyed that we're going to need to replace. Let's get a maintenance ticket started for that. And just like that, you know, the works are in progress. So the video sharing portion of this is extremely valuable, extremely valuable. And then we have responder to vehicle alert systems, R2V. Now, here's what we're looking at. We see responders on the left side of the screen there. On the right side of the screen, we don't endorse any of these processes or programs, is a screen capture of a Waze shot from the Waze platform. So anyone who's utilizing Waze, right, these responder vehicles are equipped with this R2V device. Now, it can be activated manually, physically flip a switch in the cab of the vehicle, or some of them are activated when the emergency lights come on and parking brakes are set. It doesn't matter, but it's activated. And what it does is you set up a predetermined geogrid so that it shoots a signal out. You determine how far, 2 miles, 10 miles, and it goes to these platforms here, these crowdsourcing platforms, this one being Waze, and it says, you know, car stop 7.2 miles away. But what else does it say? Emergency vehicle stopped, make way. That's great stuff.
Hold on, sorry. How do you mute this thing?
Yeah, that's great stuff. There's a mute button on the lower left-hand corner. So the drivers that see this can make a decision long before they get on top of the scene. Maybe they're just going to say, yeah, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to shoot off here and I'm going to go down Oak Street to Main and bypass this thing. So the ability, you know, to know in advance, you know, cuts down on the volume, the queue, and it enhances responder safety by doing that. And also some responding agencies have gotten real creative with it by arming all of their emergency vehicles with these things, and they're automatically activated as they respond, whether it's a house fire or an automobile crash, it doesn't matter. And, you know, oftentimes you'll hear on the radio or news, you'll see where 2 fire trucks collide at an intersection and you think, gee, how could that happen? Right? Well, it does happen. You know, one loud noise, silences the other loud noise. But when they have these responder to vehicle systems and they're both equipped with it, they get an alert in their cab that they're approaching another emergency vehicle. So the technology is just taking off, and this is an absolutely great program. That brings me to roundtable case study. Leading into this, we do have some guests here with us, before I introduce them, I just want to add that, you know, I'm a firm believer that it all starts with engineering and design. I'm a rock solid believer in the 3 E's of safety, and that is engineering, education, and enforcement. And if you get them in place and you got them at the right level and the right people behind them, you can do wonderful things there. So, you know, I told you I think you're the most important people that no one ever gets to see. And I'm grateful for all that you do out there. So let me introduce to you the special guests that we have here with us. You see them, their photos here on the screen here. Chief Melvin Byrne, currently a contract SME with the International Association of Fire Chiefs. His experience includes 47 years as volunteer with the Ashburn Volunteer Fire Rescue Department. He's 10 years as a captain with Loudoun County, Virginia Fire Rescue, and 10 years as division chief with the Virginia Department of Fire Programs. Chief Byrne has worked with the TIM program in Virginia since its inception. So we welcome the chief. We have Captain Darcy Wheel. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but my intent is good. He's with Colorado State Patrol. Captain Will leads 2 TIM teams in Colorado, the I-70 East and the US 40, US 287 TIM teams. Welcome, Captain. Thank you. We have Patricia Westsick, is a former Arizona State Trooper, as well as a former Arizona TOC and Washington State DOT Traffic Management Center employee. Patricia ran the Maricopa County Regional Emergency Action Coordinating Team, the REACT team, for 9 years. Currently, Patricia is a supervisor of the Seattle SDOT response team. Her specialty is arterial incident management. We also have with us Gary McClellan. He's a past president and active board member of the Oregon Tow Truck Association, as well as the vice president of race towing in Eugene, Oregon. He's been working in the tow industry since 1975 as an urban light-duty tower and small business owner. Welcome, Gary. We also have Justin Guinan, is the current traffic incident management program coordinator for the state of Oregon. Justin has over 10 years in fire and EMS, as well as been employed with ODOT for nearly 5 years. Additionally, Justin has been a TIM trainer since 2014. So I'd like to thank you all, welcome you all here. And I tell you, if my mom was sitting across the table from me, she'd be tapping her foot, making sure I do this. So I'm about Patricia, I'm going to bring you up first, if you don't mind. And I'm going to ask, here's what we'd like to hear. What successes, what challenges have you encountered in your implementing the TIM process? And if you could share some of that with us, whether it's ongoing or you've already conquered it. So welcome, and I appreciate it. I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be put on the spot right away. I would say some benefits and some positive notes that with arterial incident response was my time in Arizona. Again, it was 9,000 square miles. And we worked with a lot of city agencies, and the arterial incident response was very well received there. It worked really well. When I came here to Seattle, we brought up the team here, and it's working. It is working, doing what it needs to do. Our time working with the PD and WashDOT, it's starting to grow, and it's starting to get out there what we do. And I'm glad to see that people are starting to look at arterial incident response. I think some of the challenges that I've been involved with since I've been involved with TIM since 2012, since they first came down to Arizona, is that the problem is a lot of agencies trying to get the local agencies involved is they always see it as a state, because it's always the federal highway, that's all the training is the state. And trying to explain to them, no, it's the same. What happens on the freeway, it happens on the city streets. In fact, now with the Washington training guide, we actually have arterial incident response or arterial stuff in the training. So now people are starting to see it. And my hope is that with that, we can start getting more local agencies involved, more city agencies, and start growing it from there. I have a lot to say about arterial incident response. There's a lot to do with it. And I'm looking forward, as the years go by, that we can actually get people involved, more involved, and work well together. That's what I'm hoping for.
Outstanding. You all are doing some great work out there. If anyone has any questions for our speakers, please feel free to use the chat. We'll get to them. At this point, thank you again, Patricia. Chief Melvin Byrne. Chief, if you don't mind, I appreciate pretty much the same line. What have your challenges been? What are your successes been? What hurdles have you cleared, or what are you facing? And welcome and thank you so much, sir, for your time.
All right. Thank you, sir. First off, it's an honor for the fire service to be involved in this kickoff of NextGen TIMs. It's important to us as it is to all responders. I was asked to give an example of how TIM's concepts are saving lives in our discipline. One that has really been outstanding was the Irving, Texas Fire Department. they have about 35 miles of major thoroughfare. They average 850 accident scenes that require blocking annually, a bunch. They use the TIM's concepts to increase their safety and reduce their damages to their equipment that they were using to block. The chief noticed that there was a big increase in the cost of their repairs, and he did a 12-month search. He found out that in a given 12-month period, he had $1.5 million in damages to his fire trucks from struck by while they were blocking the scene. And that didn't include the tens of thousands of dollars that they had for medical expenses for injuries to the firefighters during that 12-month period. That drove him to a decision to strip 2 of his old pumpers, except for warning lights and traffic management equipment, to include cones, flares, absorbent for spills, to use as blockers. Since that program was put into place during 2018, 2 of these blockers have been totaled. The last one was actually just this July the 4th. Again, he is using these older pumpers as blockers. Now he is equipping them with better signage. He said as he gets money, he's been adding directional, different colors, etc., to help do a better job. But Chief Conley said it took 2 years to get the program going, but he doesn't regret the time. He said it's been great. Being out of service, he says, we don't worry about the pumpers and the auxiliary appliances. Conley says, noting that the sole mission is protecting people on the roadway. He added, they keep water on board the tanks to add weight to the blocking rigs. He closed by saying that the program is making his people safer and that he's saving the city a lot of money. And again, we have several examples in the fire service where people have utilized that type of equipment, older equipment, to serve as blockers. One other point that kind of surprised me when I was talking to him about the incident was he said that most of the impacts have been side impacts because they always obviously park at an angle and that to this point they hadn't had any that were directly rear-ended, but he said all of them have stopped those vehicles from encroaching on the work area. When I discussed the program with some of our fire service members, I got a few quotes from them. Starts out with, they know that NextGen TIMs is going to benefit us. Local roads are just as dangerous as the highways with both speed and limited visibility. Therefore, the NextGen TIMs can apply to any roadway, not just a highway. We should take the same actions on a 25-mile-an-hour residential street as we would on the highway. NextGen will be able to be used for instance where roads are closed or impacted, for example, from wildland fires or hazmat incidents, other motor vehicle collisions, structure fires, etc. NextGen certainly is going to help us with in our roadway environment in the urban, suburban, and rural areas. We want to encourage the technology, which has obviously already been mentioned. We are utilizing it. It's helpful. The fire service wants to emphasize the use of TIM as well. There are a lot of examples, but one that came up really quick, and I know there's a lot in other states, but in Castle Rock in Colorado, they have the Southern Interstate 25 Incident Management Plan, where the entire response team has developed a plan on what to do if the highway is closed, for example, for a period of time, including those alternate routes, resources needed, communications, and etc. But on behalf of Chief Kroon, who is our IFC representative and our membership, thank you for allowing us to be part of the leadership team, and we look forward to the product.
Outstanding, Chief. Yeah, it was great to hear you talk about the Texas and how they stepped out of the box and began using some older apparatus and putting crash attenuators on the rear ends and arrow boards on the tops. Yeah, and I believe I heard the stat that, you know, and most often when there is a hard collision involving a blocking vehicle, that oftentimes the driver that strikes that blocking vehicle, it's a fatal incident. So yeah, they're thinking out of the box for sure. Thank you, Chief, so much for your time.
Yeah, and
Justin,
just to add, he
Oh,
did
go
say
ahead.
there were several incidents where the driver that struck was a fatality.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? Yeah, good deal. All right, thank you, Chief, again. Justin, I'm gonna bring you up, bud. Any challenges, what your successes are, anything that you're facing, and any tips you can give. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm going to talk about a couple of successes as a statewide program coordinator. It's a privilege to be able to see, you know, all four corners of Oregon and see the successes that they're having due to the TIM program. When I started with ODOT, I was an incident responder on the road, so I didn't have the global view like I do now. Although I was a TIM trainer, I was only teaching local TIM and I wasn't paying attention statewide as much. Now that I'm sitting in the position I am now, we've trained upwards of 7,400 responders across the state of all disciplines. We've been able to form several more TIM teams. I think we have a total of about 8 or 9 active TIM teams across the state on our major corridors and major problem areas. What's interesting about those TIM teams is agencies are now sitting at the table, and it's not just ODOT and Oregon State Police. It's all agencies, local, county public works, city public works, tow companies, all sitting at the table making the same decisions. Some of these decisions we've had, you know, large country music festivals that has enabled them to talk about routes for emergency vehicles, traffic management, casualty collection points, things like that, that normally would not be a conversation. It might be an email passed around where one agency created a map and everybody else follows it. Versus now we have TIM teams where everybody has a voice and everybody has an opportunity to sit at the table. I think one of the biggest advantages that I've seen in the TIM teams, and Gary's going to talk about this a little bit, but one of the biggest advantages is that we have our tow partners sitting at a table. And when we do our construction updates for our local area where Gary works, is I'm able to tell them as a TIM team, we're able to say, hey, we're going to have a construction project here. If you get a crash at this location, here's your best detour. Here's how you can access your yard. Here's the best way to get to that incident. So I think these TIM teams have added a lot of value across the state. We've really advanced TIM as a mindset, not just a 4-hour training. And I think that's important. You have to have the mindset more than just a one and done training. Part of that mindset as an agency for ODOT is that our engineers and planners have started taking TIM more seriously and using it as an advantage to design the roadways, like you talked about, 3 E's. Now we're designing roadways with TIM objectives in mind. I'm not going to put 2 chain up areas in a snow zone across from each other that's going to create traffic incident issues, right? I'm going to offset them. I'm going to make sure the design to handle the capacity and prevent secondary crashes due to vehicles pulled over on the shoulder. So in this group for the ITE, I think the big takeaway of the TIM is when you're looking at engineering and planning, you know, signal programming, things like that, connected vehicle ecosystems, TIM has a place. The mindset does belong. It's just a matter of how we integrate all of the different thought processes into one. And I think there's a lot of opportunities, especially we've seen them at Oregon DOT. There's a lot of opportunities to integrate TIM into your everyday, you know, whether it's litter picking, designing a new intersection with signals and sensors, or just managing a crash as a maintenance crew and an incident responder. TIM is a mindset, and I think that's the biggest takeaway I have for everybody today.
Outstanding, Justin. Yeah, it's great when you mention, you know, the design and the engineering, you know, which a lot of you folks here can relate to, I'm sure. You know, when you have an incident and you're filtering vehicles away from the crash site or the incident site, pushing them off onto other roadways, the impact to the communities at the ends of those exit ramps or roads, are suddenly, impacted, and oftentimes in an adverse way. It can get real busy in little small town USA if everyone's jumping off the expressway a mile up the road and using their town to cut through. So, the pre-staging of traffic control equipment, of variable message boards, and that all of that comes into play, and can be part, of the design and the engineering phase to kind of ease that, anything we can do. And remember, those small communities that are out there, they may only have, believe it or not, 1 or 2 police officers for their entire town. And if they're out in the middle of the intersections trying to direct traffic that's coming off the main roadway, that can cripple their entire system. So, in the design and engineering phases, maybe think about that, the pre-stage areas and what equipment would be there. Great deal. Thanks, Justin. I really appreciate it. Next up, Captain Darcy Wheel from Colorado State Patrol. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. What you got for us in the way of successes or challenges?
Everybody hear me?
I got you.
Okay, good. I end up talking on a Zoom call for several minutes before I realized nobody can hear me. So I just want to make sure. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about specific challenges and successes we have here in Colorado. And I'll start with our challenges. I think I wrote down a couple, and probably more than I have time to talk about. But the first would be institutionalizing this mindset and the TIM methodology into our organization. We've had or been aware of traffic incident management since probably around 2013. And now we are really moving forward. And I say now, the last few years, we're moving forward with finally getting that into every member of the organization's mindset and how they operate on a day-to-day basis. Specific success to that is we have, hopefully by the end of this year, we will be one of the first law enforcement agencies in the nation where every certified member of our agency will have a national TIM training certificate. We're doing that through the 10 modules in the First Responder Learning Network. And that's sort of the start of making sure that we're getting everyone on the same page. And I know someone mentioned earlier that this is being taught in academies. Part of my bio that didn't make it in there is I am now part of the academy. I'm the commander of the continuing education. And we teach this to every cadet coming out. So they receive all 10 modules at the beginning of their career. So we are ensuring that moving forward, we have institutionalized this into every member we have. What we've done further to help institutionalize TIM into our day-to-day is we broke down the other 40 modules within the the Responder Safety Learning Network, and we've separated them into 3 tiers. This allows us to then push out training to all members, whether it's troopers and boots on the ground, or supervisors and field commanders, or executive leadership. That way we can ensure that we're directing specific training to them in the areas that they need and should have specific to TIMs. I'll just hit a little bit on the training and messaging. When we first rolled out TIMs years ago, probably the biggest takeaway for troopers and field commanders like myself was quick clearance. We wanted to make sure that we were getting roadways open quickly. And I think it was a messaging issue on our end that we didn't fully understand what quick clearance was. We thought that meant get up there, move fast, do paperwork quickly, and get everybody out as quick as we can. What we realized is that actually was putting members in danger as well. Quick clearance, we had to re-educate ourselves on what that really meant. And I see Mr. McClellan with the Tow Truck Association. One of the greatest examples I had is in an early TIM team meeting was the tow driver just spoke up and said, if I'd have gotten that call earlier when fire and EMS and law enforcement was getting that call and maybe gotten some basic information, I could have been there quicker and then I could have cleared it out quicker. And in reality, that's the point that none of us ever thought of is we all rushed to the scene, but we didn't call our tow until much later in the day or in the event. And that creates that lack of a quick clearance. So we're learning how to message that out to our members, making sure that we're bringing all of the people that need to be on scene to our TIM meetings and having those conversations ahead of time. Okay, so next big challenge that I talk about for an agency of my size is really accountability and management of our TIM programs. So several years ago, we were asked to stand up TIM teams in each of our field troops. I can say today we have 27 teams throughout Colorado. These are both major corridor teams as well as arterial roadways. Some of our troops don't have major interstates in them, but they still have TIM teams. And we found value in having them, whether they are on a major artery or a smaller community area. But the management of those teams is a lot of work. So I firmly believe in TIMs. I've experienced its value on many occasions, but it doesn't mean that I have any more time in my day to deal with it. And I think as everybody who is a part of one of these teams, we all have a primary job. And so one of the things we've tried to figure out is how do we hold ourselves accountable to the goals that we're setting forth in these TIM programs and these TIM teams. And two things that have come out for us is we've definitely seen success when we've had a contract individual that helps us manage those teams. Specifically here in Colorado with CDOT's help, we have contractors that help us manage these and help us put together our AARs and identify areas that we need to work on. So there's success number one for our accountability, which is a challenge. And then the second one is we've just rolled out 40X, and we had Franklin Covey help us with all 27 of our teams. And those teams are now identifying their wildly important goals and what they can do to achieve those goals. And we're really hoping that the 40X model, or 4 disciplines of execution model, helps us ensure that we're moving forward in the future and not just becoming stagnant and sitting around and talking with each other, which is what some of these, the less mature teams have probably done in the past. I've probably rambled, and I'm not sure if I've covered on everything you asked, but that's what I've got.
No, outstanding job, Captain. 27 TIM teams. I mean, that's just outstanding. And you said it. We all know it here. TIM works. It's as simple as that. It's proven. And your conversation about the unsung heroes, as I like to call them, and that is our tow operators. And that was a great lead in for Gary. Gary, I'm gonna bring you up. I believe you are, the unsung heroes. You're certainly part of the team for sure, a very critical part of the team, because no matter how many fire trucks and ambulances we can put on the scene, it's not going to get clear till y'all get there and take care of business. So we're grateful for all that you and your association does. So Gary, what challenges have you had, or what successes are you working on? We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. For the first 35 plus years that I was in the towing industry, we were, as the captain alluded to just a moment ago, we were always the last one to be called, expected to show up without any information, have all the tools that we needed to clear the roadway in a timely manner. I was lucky enough to be involved at the implementation committee level here in the state of Oregon back in 2013. So again, for many, many years, we were told what to do. And as this TIM program has progressed across this state, the towers are being brought to the table and being asked what our needs are. One of the biggest things that we can have done is to be called earlier. We may not be able to start performing the work, but we could at least bring our equipment and be ready that when we were given the go-ahead, it would reduce the amount of time it would take us to remove the vehicles. On the local level, being part of the TIM team here in Eugene Springfield, we do have quite a group at the table. We have OSP, we have Eugene Police, we have private hazmat companies, we have towers, we have transportation, and we were having quarterly meetings before last spring. We expect to get those started again, and they go a long ways in helping coordinate events coming up. We discussed the eclipse that we had in, I believe, 17. That was quite an event out here. On the state level, we've been able to work with ODOT, OSP, our Department of Justice, and our legislators in shaping the future of the towing industry here in the state of Oregon. We were able to, it took several sessions, but we were able to finally get passed a bill that created a tow review board. It will have a panel of law enforcement, insurance, tow, citizen, consumer advocate, and when there are issues with tow companies, they're going to be able to take that to the review board and get those issues resolved. Our consumers don't feel like they have a vehicle to accomplish that today. So we're really happy that that's come along. One of the challenges has been local law enforcement buy-in. It's been extremely difficult to get our city police and our sheriff's departments to buy into it. That being said, I see that I just received an email today that in September, we're going to have a Lane County Sheriff's sponsored TIM class. So it is changing the culture of our industry. I'm really pleased with that. The bottom line, at the end of the day, as a private business owner, I'm responsible for 21 families, and I need for their provider that works here to be able to go home and take care of their family every night. So thank you.
Well said, Gary. I said the unsung heroes, and way too often it's the tow operators that are being struck out there, and oftentimes they work alone, or they work in some very precarious positions. And your point on call us early, right? Not just call us early, but give us a clear picture of your needs, right? You don't want to roll out there with the standard Jordan rollback if you need a 35-ton rotator, right? So I see your point there. We're grateful for all that you and your association and all of your members and peers do in the name of life safety, because that's what it's all about. Just want to thank all of the guests here. You're all doing amazingly great stuff. Continue to push forward. The folks, you can see that as we've talked through here, a lot of folks, you have to kind of be nimble and think out of the box, when you're rolling with your TIM program. And I know you all are creative. So, my advice or final offer, I guess, would be here before I turn this over, would be, if you need help with your TIM program, launching it, modifying it, improving it, don't think that you're in this alone. All right, get a hold of Paul, myself, or Jim, or one of your other TIM teammates, and get in touch with us, because we have a tremendous amount of resources and tools, and we want to help. We want to help you get to where you want to be. So with that, Katie. And I'd like to introduce, now look, I've been looking to do this for a long time, right? My fellow worker, Paul Joden from Boston, is going to pick up and lead us through the EDC 6 initiative status and highlights. Thank you all for your patience and your attention. And Paul, take it away.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. I couldn't help think of how I miss hanging out with engineers after 38 years working with Massachusetts DOT. I hung around with nothing but engineers, and I'm not an engineer. So it's great to see engineering and the interest we have had in this session. Before we get going, I just have a couple of comments on a few of the speakers. One is the towers. There are folks like Gary all over the country. We've run into them. All the people that at the national level that work, very professional, very interested in being part of the team. So, and that goes whether they're, we have statewide contracts or state contracts with the police, state police, or at the local level. So they're just, there are professional towers that are really great partners like Gary. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. The other, another comment I had is, I noticed on the participant list and some of the comments that we received, there was several participants from Colorado. So, the Colorado has 27 teams throughout the state. That's unprecedented. Basically, there are some other states with multiple TIM teams and all kinds of areas, and a lot of them rural. Right? If I'm thinking Colorado, a lot of them have probably rural. Reach out and we can put you in touch, so you can participate, and at the state level, we can facilitate some of the things. But the other, last but not least, is, the partners that, just having the discussions, just the process of having these discussions with folks, Chief Byrne on the fire perspective, and the local, Patricia with the local, the Seattle program. We didn't even get into why the Seattle stood up a TIM program, because, and I won't now, but just saying that there was a need based on a couple of, one in particular, significant event. So we will be answering questions and facilitating questions. Some of the questions that are in the chat pod we'll get to in a minute. Just want to get through this section here, and then Steve and I are going to talk to you. So for everyday counts, what you see here is a number of states that have signed up, quote unquote, signed up to participate. The Everyday Counts program is a state coordinated program with federal highways. So, but that doesn't mean that we can't work with you. So if your state is not shown here, we'd be more than happy to work with you anyways. And or if your state is shown, there's more than likely some people that are willing to bring you into the group and participate there. I will note that some of these states that didn't, quote unquote, sign up are advanced states with TIM, and for whatever reason they didn't sign up. Pennsylvania is an advanced state, as is Wisconsin and Michigan and Georgia. Georgia is one of the best programs in the country, for example, as is Pennsylvania. So, basically, we're all heading, the whole nation's heading for another generation of traffic incident management, and we want to help you, whatever your job is, to facilitate that next generation TIM. So just some highlights. You heard from the captain today, the 27 teams, when we're talking local TIM is an important thing to us. We have, the state patrol, the state patrol, along with the state DOT, CDOT, didn't just establish TIM committees and throw them out there, but they, they had a whole session in how we want to design this statewide program, and they got feedback from across the state, from all disciplines, which is the way to go, right? We're all part of the team here. So they developed a nice workbook and guidebook roadmap to assist with the consistency across the team. So they want the teams to be working on the same thing, and of course, we facilitate, Federal Highway facilitates an annual TIM self-assessment that the 27 teams will be participating in next year, which is awesome. Glad to hear that. And we actually have a new version of the self-assessment. So those of you that know the self-assessment, we ask and receive the top 75 metro areas to complete the self-assessment. Then we usually get some volunteers. There's usually somewhere between 95 and 100 that complete the self-assessment. We actually developed a second self-assessments that for our new and emerging programs, and new and emerging and rural programs, a second version of that self-assessment. So stay tuned for that. And again, your state, or we can help with that. Next, please. Utah is, by the way, we're showing you some examples of the progress that's been made and what we're trying to get others to do throughout the country with various aspects of the TIM, the Everyday Counts program. But these are just a handful of examples. There's many more, but we thought we would pick out these as relevant to this session. So Utah does a lot of cool things. They're an advanced state, but one of the coolest things I thought was they were equipped all their service patrols with drones, and all their service patrol operators are certified pilots. So they can pop that drone up there and use it for a variety of purposes, including helping out with the crash investigation documentation that law enforcement needs to do for serious crashes. So that just is, to me, that's what we're looking for with, this is the Everyday Counts aspect that we think has a lot of potential, and for use of TIM, not only for the crash reconstruction, but for other things that I think Joe mentioned earlier, so I won't repeat. Florida they've invested a lot of money over the years for traffic incident management, and they have the 25 teams that shown there. Throughout the state, there's some serious planning and operations going on with TIM. They but of interest to some of you here, they actually have what we call a local TIM program, and they're actually their version of the service patrol. It's really not a service patrol; it's an incident response vehicle that it works with on the arterial. It responds down to the arterial roadway. So when we're talking local TIM, we're talking about arterial roadways in large part, rural as well, but mostly the arterial roadways. And incidentally, I do want to mention that there's this misconception that the crashes that occur and the responders are getting struck and the secondary crashes that occur are all occurring on the freeway. That is not the case, and we're finally starting to get data to prove the case. So it's as big a concern on the arterials and the local roadways as it is on the relative to safety on the freeway. So it's still something that needs to happen. So anyways, FDOT has been collecting data for a long time, and but they're going to another level with organizing their data and putting it in a dashboard, and they in the dashboard they can break it down by the region of the state and really see how they're doing with the TIM performance measures, number of crashes, clearance times, things like that. So it's the dashboards are something that we're pushing as part of our TIM data aspect of the program, but Florida has a great example of that. And apparently, and I didn't know this, is there multiple responder to vehicle alerts pilot programs underway. So they're playing around and piloting technology that can help our responders be safer, right? That's what we want to do. We want our responders to be safe. We all want them to go home. We don't want any, we talk about fatalities, but there's an injury component of that as well, and serious injuries for our responders. So what can we do to help respond to the vehicle alerts? And we're positioned to help you deploy things like that. So Maryland has a video sharing program. They have a platform between agencies that they've had for a long time. Of course, my dog has to bark when I'm presenting. But the biggest thing we're pushing with this program is our main focus is utilizing the vehicles, the video from vehicles to the centers, and it doesn't necessarily have to be to the TMC. We use the word TMC all the time, but any kind of dispatch center, PSAP, anything like that, it can be. Maryland, the CHART program has been very successful. They're doing their own thing. They're playing around with it, and it's it's a significant opportunity to understand, for folks that are not on scene, to understand what's happening, right? So that tows, for example, can bring the right equipment. Police can know what's involved before they even get there. They can have a view of the scene. So there's an opportunity there, and we're pushing it. Nevada is another one. When we're talking local TIM, they have 6 coalitions throughout the state. They're looking to expand to 2 additional rural areas. So, again, that's local TIM. That's what we're talking about. Each coalition has big participation. I happen to be familiar with the one in Reno and Las Vegas, and they get a big group that, so there is interest. There is interest from the responder community when you call them in to talk about traffic incident management into ways of making them safer and facilitate and keep traffic flowing. The coalitions, they can do a lot of things. They can talk about the training, incident debrief. Incident debrief is one of the best ways I learned traffic incident management many years ago. But just getting the responders in the room to have a chat before a crash or an incident occurs on the highway has huge benefits. Massachusetts, my favorite state. The number 2 in the country for the training. So, the training is, we haven't talked too much about it today, but the training is a big part of this program. We've had success over the years. We want to continue with that success. We still have a long way to go with the responders that, we feel need to be trained. And we feel that everyone who is boots on the ground needs to be trained. If you respond to a crash scene, you need this training. It's for your own safety. The training is focused in large part about training. They created their own virtual training at the start of COVID. So they did some 4-hour sessions virtually. And by the way, that's the length of time that the typical sessions throughout the country are, is 4-hour sessions. The trainer sessions is an hour. I mean, is 8 hours typically. So, they're also looking to, there's a few facilities around the country that are dedicated to practical exercises. There's one in Tennessee. There's, I think Colorado is in the process of building one. So I was in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, but Massachusetts is looking for one, to be able to have the practical exercise for all those folks that did the in-person or the classroom or the remote learning. They can have that. So. Puerto Rico does some cool things for people that have been under the, have been hit and been impacted in so many ways by the hurricanes and things that we're all aware of. But they're using the UAS for training. So they have the training. They do a practical exercise. They set up a taper and the proper positioning of vehicles and things like that. Then they get the UAS up there and tape it, and so that they can critique each other on how it's going. They're also expanding UAS for vehicle detection as it relates to counts to calibrate how well certain devices detected. So they're playing around with different things and different uses for UAS. And a university project is underway to understand LOS, a level of service for segments of highway in real time using drones to share that information with the TMC. So Puerto Rico is playing. They always play with us. They always are interested in participating with us, and they continue to do so with some unique use of UAS. So this is where we get to answer some questions and to maybe have some discussions with you. Steve, if you don't mind, I want to answer one of the first questions that was in here. It was asked about, are we, basically, are we trying to advance crash reconstruction that impacts so greatly the, the roadways when law enforcement is doing their investigation, right? The answer is yes. That's been a big part of our program for years. We have made progress over the years, but the biggest project, the biggest opportunity to move forward and is using UAS drones for crash reconstruction. We're already seeing a number of law enforcement agencies throughout the country. I don't think we showed you data, but a number of agencies are have some data. 80% reduction in time we need out to have the road closed. 40% reduction. A lot of anecdotal information, but everyone that uses, all law enforcement that we talk to, and that's a number throughout the country, is the potential and the opportunities there are to really reduce the amount of time that a roadway is closed due to an investigation of serious and fatal crashes. So that is a big deal, and it's going to be a big deal. We're already seeing it advance throughout the country, and so that is one question. Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I want to maybe address a few that are in the chat pod first, and then as many of you folks, we know we asked for kind of a pre-workshop questionnaire to get us warmed up, I guess, as far as what maybe are some of your concerns, so we can ask that. But then I think it'd be a really good idea if we further engage our expert panelists to ask them some additional questions and get some additional perspectives, because we probably didn't do them justice by only giving them 5 minutes to give an overview. And I know I have some questions for them. So, but I want to start with a question by my friend Dave Hansen. He's I got to have him be first because he's a fellow Packer fan, being with the city of Green Bay. And his question is, what's the biggest challenge in from a TIM perspective when working with local public works departments? And I can just maybe start off a discussion on that. And I certainly, again, defer to some of the folks, not only our expert panelists, but even other participants in the workshop, of what have you seen has been the reaction from public works departments to TIM. And real quick, I'll just say, we always have to strive for it's a what's in it for me kind of a thing. And if we can better promote and make aware that public works is a key component for managing traffic incidents, particularly when it comes to sharing their equipment, their emergency traffic control devices and equipment. But then also, of course, with many of you, I'm sure, being ITE members, is signal system capabilities, and having an understanding that modifying some signal timing during diversion may make sense. So, Dave, I think I'm starting to answer your question, but I'd certainly like to get others to weigh in as well.
I could just weigh in for a second, Steve, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So at the national level, we have an executive leadership group, and APWA, the Public Works Association, is actually a very active member, and we've actually done some recent presentations to that group. So we're trying to hear from them. It depends on the public works group, right? Some are actively involved with traffic incident management and respond as a routine, and some say, well, we don't need this, and that's okay. But certainly there is a role. There's a role for a lot of different reasons, and I can't really speak to whether people are participating or not, but we certainly, in our view, at the national level and in many states, view them as a full partner. So.
Great. Thank you, Paul, and hopefully that kind of answered your question, Dave, but we can certainly build on that if you want to further elaborate on your question. Moving over to Ethan Jackson asked about dispatchers contacting the tow companies as part of their protocol, or is it typically when the law enforcement or others are actually on scene in response? And thank you, Captain Weil, for responding to that. And I think what I'd like to maybe punctuate with that is that that's really what the whole notion of being able to share video, not only through traffic management centers, but now with this mobile video platform, to the extent that it's possible, where perhaps, and Gary pointed out that if they can be notified a little bit early to get out there, as opposed to maybe waiting until an officer's there to confirm things, and it's not going to be a one size fits all, but if there can be some advanced notice that is derived from sharing a video and understanding what the situation is, that's what we're here to try to do. And like I said, it's not a one size fits all, and there's certainly it's situationally dependent, but that's what we're trying to achieve here.
Steve, I would just add that it depends on where you are in the country, or what agency is responsible for the tows. Just as the captain has explained it, that's typically the place. They wait till a law enforcement officer, calls for the tow. But there are other methods that folks look at that, depending, I mean, if it's a credible source, such as a state DOT person is, we're going to need a tow. Typically that's good enough, and depends on the thing. And then in some areas, the tow company, just would look at, just call us if it's a false alarm, we'll go. And in a few states, they actually pay for that. There's a small stipend that is $25 or something. And if it's a false alarm, knowing that, the earlier we can get towing on scene, the better. But I think the mindset is changed from waiting until we need them. They'd wait till they're all ready. Okay, let's hook this up and get out of here. Oh, no one called the tow company, has changed.
Right. Great point, Paul. And getting back to Gustavo's question relating to the base of operations for tow, Gary, I'm sure you can obviously provide some perspectives on this, as well as Captain Weil. But as I posted in the chat box, is from doing reviewing several rotational tow contracts and helping agencies with rotational tow contract solicitations and whatnot, that having a base of operations for tow is in near proximity to where the incidents occur, and maybe sectors, given that there's usually a number of tow operators that are part of a rotational contract. That's the response time, and the geographical location is always strongly considered in that. I don't know that there's necessarily any studies of that, other than, hey, somebody takes a look at the map, and maybe it's the law enforcement agency that's doing the contracting. They'll say, well, we can't take Steve's towing because he's 20 miles away from where we typically need him, and that's so he's disqualified because he's too far away. So hopefully that kind of answered your question there. So Paul, I see Lisa Dykstra has some questions, and I know we always get this question when we get groups together and talk about strategies and how to move forward, because even though we emphasize that a lot of TIM, in fact, the majority of TIM in our book, is very relatively low cost, especially a lot lower cost than, paving miles and miles of roadway and putting bridges together. But her question is, how are some of these strategies paid for? Are they locally funded, state funded, federally funded? I think it really is a mix. And maybe Paul, you and Joe are probably in the best position to answer some of that.
Yeah, we're just going to say yes, all the above. Yeah, it's a mixture of things that, depending on the color of the money. For the federal money, it's eligible. The city and state just decide it's important enough. There's throughout the country, there are enough that comes right out of the state budget. It's important enough to mitigate safety and crashes and flow of traffic. But Steve, I can't emphasize enough that, when you're talking transportation funds, the amount of money to facilitate or to facilitate a TIM program, the training costs the responders time, right? A lot of times, most of the training has been conducted. We've trained over 500,000 responders throughout the country. Volunteers. They just think it's a good thing. And they enjoy the training, so they train. The TIM committees, right? All you need is the the participants' time. In many locations, a contractor is hired to facilitate the TIM meetings and the agendas and the meeting notes and things like that. But yeah, there's a number of strategies and a number of different eligibilities at the federal level. They're not all of federal money is eligible, but I hope that answered the question. It's just I guess I would emphasize, don't let funding get in the way, because typically if there's an interest at the senior level in particular, the money can be found.
Yeah, and I'd like to emphasize too, not to pile on too much here, Paul, but again, I think Captain Weil even emphasized from his perspectives on accountability that, if you want to hold yourself accountable for having a structured, coordinated, ongoing program and you need help, yes, you have to invest a little, or maybe you have to invest in a little bit of money for contractor support. Maybe you don't. Maybe you can handle that within your organization, or do a key hire for somebody that's responsible for that. Something like what Justin does. But again, those areas, those states, those regions that have support usually are fairly successful. And a contract for that support is often, a lot less expensive than a major roadway or bridge project, for sure. Okay, let's now, Paul, did you, I guess I wanted to, maybe Katie, if you could go to the next slide real quick, because I wanted to at least acknowledge those of you that took some time and gave us some help by providing some input to the pre-workshop questionnaire. And we got a fairly good number of responses to that. And with all these things, the acid test is how do you kind of simply summarize things. And so what we tried to accomplish here is just to give some bullets for discussion or consideration about the results from the questionnaire, about what are the challenges that you as practitioners are facing, or you as consultants who support those practitioners are facing. So these are some of the key ones that were identified. And again, communication, and maybe Paul, I'll start and just talk a little bit briefly about communication. And communication can mean everything from, communicating awareness, as I mentioned to Dave Hansen about the awareness to public works departments and communicating with other responders about training opportunities and things like that. And I kind of call that more of the programmatic communications. Then there's the tactical communications and making sure, just like we talked about with as early a notification to the tow operator as possible. So there are all those elements, and communications continues to be a challenge. And I think it's something that we all need to recognize, because there's always room for improvement with it. And I'll stop there, and maybe Paul, you could add something.
No, I think you hit it on the head. But we did workshops. We did advanced workshops for mid-level managers. We called it, and we did it in the 50 top metro areas. It's been a few years now, Steve. I forget. Steve was the consultant on that, but the most common, we'd often go around the room and say, "What's your biggest challenge as a responder?" And the biggest, the first thing they mentioned, the most often mentioned was communication, and it would be the gamut of what Steve is talking about, because communication can mean a lot of things, but most often they're what's going on on the scene, and that can be facilitated through TIM committees and TIM meetings. So that's
Moving real quick to the next one, the real-time information sharing. We talked about information can be in the form of a video, and then the data component to that. And I would like to, and I know, Paul, you'd probably want to offer some perspectives on that, because you covered data a little bit, but I'd like to maybe ask Justin specifically is, how can we better share, or how can we share TIM data with responders that's in a way that's meaningful to them? And I stress the term meaningful, in addition to decision makers. And those are probably two different questions. And I know, and Paul already knows, going to attest to this too, that we, especially in the engineering world and the data scientists, and we're living in a world now that data is so prevalent, and the volumes of data. But I think what Justin maybe could respond to is just, how do we boil that down to something that can be used on scene by a responder? So I'll let Justin answer that question.
Yeah, thank you. So that's one thing I've kind of prided myself on in this position, is I came from the response background as a responder, right? Not a data analyst, not a program manager, boots on the ground, putting cones on the road and responding to crashes. And my joke that I always say around my group is, you make the data look good and explain it to me in a way that I can explain it to others, right? Because I'm not a data analyst, right? That's not my expertise. I hate math. But when it boils down to it, this stuff saves lives. It makes a difference. And some of these other questions I'm reading through here, how do you pick a vehicle location? Well, if I can go into a fire department, I can show them a dashboard on Power BI. It's a big, beautiful map with a bunch of dots all over it. And I say, hey, the bigger the dot, the more crashes you have. That's where you should be. That's relatable. That is something that these agencies can digest. It's something that they can understand. If I throw a table with median incident durations and average response times and time on scene and data points collected and all this other stuff, they don't care. We as program managers, engineers, planners, TIM champions, we have to get comfortable with digesting that and spitting something out to your stakeholders that they can understand. These are people with busy schedules. They don't have hours to sit down and learn what you're doing every day. They need raw data in front of them that they can make sense of. The easiest way we found is through dashboards, integrating maps and images and bar graphs and things like that that are easy to read, bright colors. You can differentiate the information easily. One of my absolute favorite dashboards that we have, though, that I think is the biggest benefit, is I can put crashes in front of a firefighter or a trooper and say, hey, you get crashes this many in this area this year. But when I start saying, hey, do you want to know, your winter versus summer by quarter? We can do that. Do you want to know Monday versus Friday? We can do that. Do you want to know 3 p.m. versus 5 p.m.? We can do that. And we have broke down our data to say, to show an agency and say, look, if you want to know Friday at 4 p.m. on the Oregon coast, where your busiest spot's going to be, we can click Friday at 4 p.m. and we can click the district that covers the coast, and I can show you exactly where your top 5 hotspots are going to be. That is the information that we need to show the local agencies. If you're trying to cram Excel spreadsheets and big complicated reports in front of them, you're going to lose your folks. You're going to lose the people that you really need to gain. And that's the biggest thing for me. I have really taken heart to, you have to make it simple. You have to make it quick. They don't have all day to sit there and listen to this stuff. They're very busy people. They're taking a lot of time out of their regular schedule to come to these TIM team meetings, these trainings, these presentations like we're doing today. Their time is valuable. Every time one of your response disciplines are in front of you, virtually or physically, that means that they are short-staffed somewhere else in their discipline on the road. So my takeaway is, make maps, bar graphs, make it easy to digest. They shouldn't have to have a class prior to reading your data.
Thank you very much, Justin. Great remarks on that. And
Steve,
again, the second part of that question is again from, how do we share it in a meaningful way with decision makers? And I migrate over back to the slide that I showed earlier about the business case. And from my experience, that's a different type of stakeholder but a very important one, because they are in fact decision makers. But often, if you can put this in a form that they deal with every day, and that's the almighty dollar, and if you can show savings, cost savings and whatnot, that helps with them. But certainly would defer to any additional comments on that from you, Justin, or others, Paul.
yeah, no, I was just going to add that Oregon has a fantastic newsletter where they show their data. Very simple graphic data visualization, right? Is engineers on the call know about that, and they do a fantastic job of just a simple graphic or visualization of the data that is fantastic. So if you want to get some copies of those newsletters, Justin is more than happy to share. He's part of the team. Steve, I just wanted to answer, just take 2 seconds, and Lisa is talking. She says that she has 32 individual cities. She in one county. So I'm assuming you're an MPO in some form, council of governments, whatever. Lisa, we have a lot of information. We have we have a national team that is, a group of subject matter experts and people influential within, their discipline and are experts in TIM. We have at least 4 or 5 that are MPO managers who organize TIM programs. They have these happen to be large cities, but there's one in Maine that coordinates Maine. In fact, they filled out the questionnaire extensively. There's a Philadelphia region, Dallas-Fort Worth region, California with the San Francisco Bay Area Council of Governments, and others. So those are just the ones that, so we have a lot of information if you want it, and we can put you in touch with those people. We'd love to participate with you, Lisa, and why those MPOs feel it's important enough to, have TIM programs facilitated by their staff.
And Paul, we've always said too that, that the MPOs are really in a very unique and good position to do that, because that's part of their mission statement anyway, is to facilitate that coordination, be it for a transportation improvement project or something operational like traffic incident management. But as Paul said, the MPOs are, I think, in a really good position to further the TIM dialogue and even offer support with establishing and maintaining programs.
you know.
Yeah, Steve, I would like to add to Lisa's question. Our Portland metro area has done good, done bad, done good, done bad, you know, on their TIM team. And I think when it's been successful through leadership and stuff like that, we've had a lot of leadership changes over the years, but when it's been successful, it comes down to door knocking and phone calling, right? And it really comes down to getting out to those agencies. 32 is manageable. What you really have to figure out, I think, is you have to find that person within that agency that A, believes in the program, is going to invest in it, and B, is going to be there. We've had people on our TIM teams in our metro area that were appointed or voluntold, and you don't get the same investment. And then we've had other agencies where those people truly want to be there, and they're invested. They want to see a difference, right? And so I think to manage something like that, and the MPO, I love that recommendation as well. The MPOs are built for that, but I would definitely say, you know, getting out to those individual cities and say, hey, you know, this is something we really want to do. Who's your director of public works? Who's your, you know, safety officer, or somebody that can relate back to TIM and say, hey, you know, we would love to have you at this meeting. And I can tell you that first meeting should not be data, right? It should not be, hey, here's data, here's all this stuff, and just flooding them with all this information. It should be, you know, introduce them to each other, get to know what their investment is. Why do they want to be part of this? Do they even know what you're talking about? But I have found the most success has been just knocking on the door and saying, hey, I'd like to talk.
Thanks,
Justin,
Joe.
that's why you're successful. That's fantastic.
Thanks, Steve. I'd like to ask Captain Heal. I'm sorry.
Wow. Yeah.
Weil,
I have a
I'm
question
sorry.
for Captain Weil as well. So you go first.
Yeah, I wonder if you could, you know, the bullet on coordination between stakeholders, which is an aspect of communication, but that was something that was shared by the people that filled out the survey. So I was wondering if the captain could provide your perspective on that.
I got distracted with my last name. Can you repeat the question?
So on the screen is a coordination between stakeholders is a challenge that was completed in the surveys that we sent out to the participants. You know, what are the struggles, and the opportunities with the coordination among stakeholders within, you know, the Colorado program?
So that's a interesting question, because it actually kind of, for us, it always goes back to the first bullet point, which is every AAR we've had, I would say the majority of all of our AARs come back to issues with communication. So coordination is always our ability to appropriately communicate what we need from them and what they need from us. And doing that ahead of time, that's the coordination piece that we've learned, is that we have to figure these things out before the events unfold. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I think so. So for those of you engineers that might not know what AAR is, it's an after action review. So it's you know, it has different names, but AAR is the most common. The after action review is, and frankly, back in Massachusetts when I had the job, that's where I learned the most about TIM and about the issues that, you know, the different partners have. So
and I would just add one more piece, if I may, that
sure.
Part of the coordination was also, as we began these TIM teams, we had to understand what, and I think somebody just mentioned it, we had to understand what these other entities do, what they need to be doing, what they need from us. So to appropriately coordinate and communicate with them, we have to know each other's roles. There's an old video that a lot of us TIM trainers use, which is I'm going to butcher the name of it, but I think it's the man of many hats. Everybody thought they were
Hats video. Yeah.
Yes, the hats video. Everybody thought that as they got on scene, they were in charge and it was their scene, whether it was a DOT or fire or law enforcement. And understanding each other's roles helps us coordinate much more effectively and efficiently.
Yeah, that's good point.
Captain, if I may, I have a follow-up question for you. I was getting goosebumps by hearing about what you said about the mindset and especially how that's translated into training, not only with your organization, but then the fact that you're integrating that into the academy. And this might be a difficult question to answer, and it has to probably be a little more anecdotal at this point. But what I'd like to know is, are you seeing results from that training? Are you seeing, if you're taking a young law enforcement officer and providing the training, are you seeing that training put to practice?
That's a great question. And yes, we are seeing it. I would suggest that our younger generation officers that are coming on are much more open to the new training. Our challenges have been with our senior officers, those of us that came on 20 years ago, that this is how we did it back then. And my gosh, you're not going to tell me some new fancy way to do it. So that was the group that we had to figure out how to educate in a way that they would listen. And I'll give a specific example of that from just a law enforcement and a CDOT or DOT perspective. When I came on, my patrol car was outfitted with push bumpers. Those push bumpers were for looks, and they better never be bent. And if a trooper ever bent those push bumpers, it was you were going to be paying with paperwork to your supervisor. So there was really not a lot of use for the push bumpers. But today, and for probably the last few years, we've retrained individuals to understand those push bumpers are there for a specific reason. And this goes back to the tow question earlier. We have challenges in areas where we're very rural, and a tow is usually an hour out no matter what. And we need to be able to use the resources we have available. And that's push bumpers. And we've done a lot of studies and put out videos and shown that regardless of the size, there are ways that we can push and open up roadways with our small patrol cars. And then we understood that there's things we can't push. And that's where we started training with our CDOT partners. And in reality, they can get wheel loaders from a lot of their DOT shops out to some of these scenes much quicker than we can get a tow. And the damage has already occurred. So using a wheel loader to move a 50-foot tractor trailer from blocking an interstate is perfectly acceptable. In the past, that wasn't. So that's part of the training that's helped us move forward. And we see instant results as soon as people say, oh, okay, I didn't know that I could do that.
Excellent.
Thank you, Captain. That great.
We've heard that about the bumpers in our travels as well. That's changing. It is changing, but years ago we heard that as well.
Yeah, in fact, Paul, maybe my memory is a little bit better than yours, but I remember specifically doing a workshop in Denver where that was brought up. So
yeah. So now it's changed. Yeah.
Captain is confirming that for sure.
Yeah.
So we only got a time for maybe a couple more questions, but because I know Ali Masbar well, I mentioned before that he and I used to work together. He's a good friend and great guy. He's bringing up the fact that we need to be influencing our designers in that, especially in Texas, where there's the prevalent service road use and layout as far as the right of way and whatnot. And yes, Ali, I think it is very important that we get those designers to the table when they're reconstructing those facilities to recognize, especially in Texas, again, when there's an incident on the main lines, what happens to the traffic? Obviously, it goes to the service road area. So I really believe that there is an opportunity to better engage those folks and bring in some of the, not, you know, it's not just about the engineers talking back and forth, but bring in support from law enforcement and even the fire departments and get their perspectives and let the design engineers hear it from them as well. So hopefully, I know we could probably talk all afternoon about that particular topic, but I appreciate the response or the question there, Ali. Paul, do you want to maybe do what we got time for one more or?
Yeah, I thought we could ask Patricia on
Yeah.
her perspective on and even Chief Byrne
Yep.
on you know, the whole picture, Patricia, the equipment availability, the sort of the last bullet, but you know, any closing thoughts based on what you've heard and what your perspective might be, Patricia, on everything.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, Paul, but I want to spotlight Patricia's experience in that she went from Arizona, she went up to Seattle. She's applying what she learned in Arizona to Seattle. And that's exactly what we all need to do. We've all moved around in our careers. And if we can keep that mindset, as the captain and Justin have emphasized, we can continue to spread the word. And I think that's really important. But I'll let Patricia, you can comment on that.
Okay. So what I've learned, well, equipment availability, you know, it's all really important, especially going from, you know, an agency where I had 20 trucks under me to now where we only have 5 and I have 10 employees. We run 24/7. And especially with COVID, you know, the funding went down. We make it work. You know, we still are out there for 24/7. Our trucks have all the equipment that they need. One of our biggest things that we carry that a lot of don't are the Go Jacks. They're kind of like small jacks that we can put under tires and jack the tires up and we can quickly get them out of the road. That's been a big benefit for us up here, especially since the roads tend to be a little bit smaller. Training, all the guys are trained like they were in Arizona, but I mean, it works for them. They have their ICS classes, they have their traffic control supervisor, their hazmat, everything that I feel that they need to do this job. And I've had the support from my management with the funding to get this training for them. For, let's see, outreach to rural areas, well, we don't really deal with that here. Our thing is reaching out. I work really well with WSDOT, their Seattle counterparts. So that wasn't there before. Now that we have an open communication, I can tell you when I first started here, SPD was like, no, you're never going to be on our radio system. That door is closed. Now, a couple of years later, the door is open. So now we're in talks with that and how can we better help the PDs and get these roads open quicker? And this is one of those things. So it's moving forward. Again, it's going to take a while, and we are having a good outreach here. On data collection, I kind of want to touch on what Justin was saying. We here don't have.
You have to. We have 2 minutes left. So, and I.
Okay, go ahead. But I can just tell you that it's working. What I've learned in Arizona, it's working here. Of course, you got to make adjustments as you do everywhere. But it is working. Arterial is working, and I just wish I could get others as interested.
Thanks, Patricia. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to share with you some the resources that we have. You know, so we're doing a series of webinars, both for the individual topics. We have a Talking TIM webinar that's coordinated by the National Operations Center of Excellence every month on the 4th Wednesday. If you want more information on that, all things TIM. We have, oh, okay. I was wondering why you were messing with me, Katie. You know, we're positioned and we'll be offering over the next 2 years, or next year and a half, pair exchanges and workshops. We can do it at a variety of different levels, statewide, multi-state, you know, local in your community. If you think it would be beneficial to have a workshop or peer exchange. We can do that. We have technical assistance. Everything that we talked about today, every aspect of NextGen TIM, the technologies and the the local, like, we have expertise that we can reach out to and coordinate with that. So there's materials already available, and actually more coming. Tons of materials on all kinds of things, case studies, fact sheets, marketing materials, whatever we, and anything else that we think we might, might be helpful to you outside of sending you money, because we can't do that. So, Katie, next slide. So there are some programs that you can apply for through the Everyday Counts program. Each state has a stick council, a stick committee. They $100,000 per state per year. You can apply to get a small amount of money. I know it's not much funding, but it does help. A small amount of money can help you get a lot of things done. Committee meetings, or a conference or something. So that but it's competitive, so you have to put in for it, and it's per year. So the federal fiscal year, which ends in September. And then there's the accelerated deployment, the A demo projects that are important, and they're a bigger lift to get the funding, but they're for projects that are just ready to go to the next level, that have been tried and are successful, but just need another push to become more successful, to become implemented. So I know, Doug, I think
we're right at the end here.
Yeah.
For the workshop here. So
Yeah.
And like Joe said, I think Katie also posted some stuff in the chat box. There's plenty of information out there. If you go to Mr. Google, you can find, Joe and Paul and Jim's contact information. Probably can find Steve's too. And just reach out to them, and you'll find they'll be helpful to the different kind of resources you might need. With that, I'm going to close the workshop tonight. So I want to thank you from IT to all of our speakers. That appreciate you being here and sharing with us, and thanks for everyone else for attending today. As a reminder, to receive the PDH credits for today's workshop, you must view the entire webinar live or recorded and complete the evaluation at the back end of that, and then your credit certificate will be unlocked and will be able under the certificates tab in the IT Learning Hub account that you'll have because you've registered for the meeting. The link I posted for that in the chat box to get to that place. Otherwise, you can get to it through the annual meeting page. It'll say, rate session or something at the end of the session. So the recordings for this will be available within about 48 hours to all meeting registrants. And lastly, since it's starting right now, a reminder to join us, register through the conference and join us to watch the IT student chapters competing in the 2021 IT Collegiate Traffic Bowl. It starts at 6 o'clock tonight. Have your favorite universities there. And with that, I think we're done. And thanks very much to everybody for being here.